Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here and it's time for a book haul. So even though I've been trying to slow down my book buying, I've had a lot of trips out recently with friends and ended up buying quite a few books. I haven't really been spending much money because I tend to buy them in secondhand bookshops, but yeah, the pile is ever growing, so there is going to be a change possibly in the new year in terms of my book buying. I need to rein it in, but I want to show you some books that I've recently been either sent by publishers or bought myself, and yeah, let's just get into it because there's quite a few as always. So the book that I've been sent by a publisher recently, I was sent by Walker Books, and that is Barefoot on the Wind by Zoe Marriott. And this is not a continuation of her series, which was Shadows on the Moon. And, oh, hold on. She wrote a trilogy. She wrote a trilogy called The Night Itself, Darkness Hidden, and Frail Human Heart. And I believe that this is set in the same world as that, but it's a totally different story, so you can read it as a standalone because I haven't yet got to read the original trilogy, and this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so I'm really excited to try this one out. And in fact I may just slip this in to my Beauty and the Beast reading in August when I read with Janet, and yeah, I might just read this and then pass it on to her to read as well, so that we can both read something that's really new coming out and let you know what we think of it. So I recently went on a lovely little impromptu shopping trip with Caitlin from Kitty G. We both ended up being free on a particular day and just said, yeah, let's meet up, we'll do some book shopping and go to the cinema. So we saw Ghostbusters, which was brilliant. And then we also went to our favourite secondhand bookshop and I picked up a few books. The first one was not on my radar, but I was sitting waiting for Caitlin at King's Cross Station, and there was a couple of women chatting together, and one of them said, well, get your book out, and that piqued my interest. My ears pricked up and I sort of just slyly looked over and saw the book, and I googled it while I was sitting there, all very stalkerish, and the lady sitting opposite me had obviously written the book. And so when her friend popped off to get something to eat, I was like, she's on her own, I can be brave. So I introduced myself and said I had a BookTube channel and asked her a bit about herself and her book. And then I went off with Caitlin shopping, and we went to our favourite bookshop and her book was in there, and I thought, this is karma, this is fate, I must buy it and try it. And so yeah, it's a non-fiction book. It's called Becoming, and her name is Laura Jane Williams. I know Laura has a blog, it's called Superlatively Rude, and she also writes for lots of magazines. And the blurb on this says, when the man Laura Jane Williams thought she would wed dumped her and married her best friend, when the man Laura Jane Williams thought she would wed dumped her and married her friend, she was devastated. Empty, drinking too much, sleeping around and moving from place to place, refusing to put down roots, she tried to fill the void, the gaping hole, that heartbreak that left behind. She wanted control, to grab life by the balls, to live boldly, but she rapidly learnt that wasn't that simple. Resolving that life couldn't go on as it was, and that the backlog of men and sadness that haunted her would not define her, Laura declared a year-long vow of celibacy, and in a Riviera convent she slowly put herself back together. An honest exploration of a young woman's soul and a road trip through Italy, America, Paris and Derby. Becoming is a book that makes you laugh, makes you cry, but most of all, it makes you realise that even when your going gets tough, no one is really fucking up like they think they are. I whispered that because my daughter's in the room and she's 3 and I'm not really going to swear, but Laura said when she was telling me about this, she said, look, it's got anal sex in the first chapter, so just so you know. And you know, I just think if it's an honest account, it's a non-fiction story of her life, and if there was anal sex in there, then I will read about that. Yeah, so I'm really intrigued to read this and see what I think, and yeah, hopefully it'll be a good one. The next book I picked up is one that I hadn't heard anything about, and Caitlin actually put me onto this one, and it says on it #Read Without Prejudice, and it's by Hodder and Stoughton. This is a proof copy. It says on the front, there are 2 points in life when we are all equal, at the moment of birth and at the moment of death. It is how we live in between that defines us. And I believe believe, this is what Caitlin has told me, that this book is written by Jodi Picoult, but the publishers weren't sure that people would pick up her books. They didn't think people were picking up her books. And so they wanted to put it out without her name on, without anything on, just to test and see what people thought of the story. And people really enjoyed it. And I think people worked out who it was. And they put out a press release recently saying that it was her story. So I love Jodi Picoult. So as soon as, I wasn't going to pick this up, but as soon as Caitlin said that it was a Jodi Picoult book, I said, yeah, please. Definitely. I really enjoy her writing, so I'm really looking forward to trying this one out. And then the final book that I picked up in this shop was one that has been on my wish list, and it is All Is Not Forgotten by Wendy Walker. This is the story of Jenny, and she's had an experimental treatment that can take your memories away after she's had some sort of horrific attack. And I believe it's a bit of a thriller because she starts to get some of her memories back and starts to uncover things. And yeah, I just think it sounds a really interesting concept. It says to her here, it says here, that was the plan, except it's not working out. Something has gone. The light in her eyes, and something was left behind, a scar on her lower back, which she can't stop touching, and she's getting worse. Not to mention that her father is obsessed with finding her attacker, and her mother is in toxic denial. It may be that the only way to uncover what's wrong is to help Jenny recover her memory, but even if it can be done, pulling at the threads of her suppressed experience will unravel much more than the truth about her attack, and that could destroy as much as it heals. So I think this just sounds like a really good YA thriller with a bit of a sort of science fiction aspect, or yeah, we shall see. Next up, the Man Booker long list was announced recently, and I have picked up a few books that were on the long list to give a go. I'm not going to be reading the whole long list. I think there's 5 books on there that I really want to try, and one of them arrived recently, and that is Hot Milk by Deborah Levy. Now, I don't believe that I've ever read any of her books, and she's quite a prolific author, I believe. She's written an awful lot of books. Yeah, there's lots here. And I've never read any of them, so I'm really interested to see how I get on with this one. The blurb really interested me. This is the story of 2 women, a mother and a daughter, who go to Almeria to, her mother is confined to a wheelchair. They don't know what is wrong with her, and they go in search of answers and help, and they're going, she's undergoing sort of an experimental treatment. And I believe it's going to be an exploration of the relationship between mother and daughter. But I'm really interested. It's not too long, so I'm really looking forward to trying this one out. Next up are some science fiction stories. The first one is Beacon 23 by Hugh Howey. I am currently working my way through all of Hugh Howey's books. I've read his Wool trilogy, which I think is Wool, Dust and Shift. I've recently picked up a novella by him, and then I saw this one and it sounded really interesting. This is about lighthouses in like our time. Lighthouses are used to help ships come in without crashing on the rocks. This is set in the far future, where lighthouses are used to help ships through the Milky Way in space, and they're not meant to break down, and I think maybe one does, and it just sounds really intriguing and a really interesting concept, and I love Hugh Howey's writing. It's so readable, and I can't wait to try this one. Next, I picked up a book I've been meaning to for ages, and I just hear nothing but great things, and that is The Geek Feminist Revolution by Cameron Hurley. I really enjoy Cameron Hurley's writing. I really enjoyed the first book in her God's War trilogy, which is God's War, and I've also got Infidel and Rapture, which are the second and third books in that series to read, so I really must get to them soon. This is a collection of feminist essays by Cameron Hurley, and I really look forward to giving it a go. Next up, I have jumped on the dragon bandwagon, and I have picked up A Natural History of Dragons, a memoir by Lady Trent by Marie Brennan. This is all over BookTube. Everyone's really enjoying it. I ummed and ahed, but I'm going to give it a go. Caitlin has told me that it's on a similar vein in terms of its readability to the Parasol Protectorate series by Gail Carriger, and I really enjoy that, so I want to see what I think, and I thought, why not? I'll give it a go. Next, I picked up The Riddle Masters game by Patricia McKillop. I really liked the look of this cover, and Patricia McKillop is someone that I know Jean from Jean's Bookish Thoughts has picked up recently, and Caitlin from Kitty G has picked up as well, and And when Jean hauled the first book in this series, I believe, on her channel, I was like, right, I'm going to give this a go. So it says on the back, in a land where wizards have long since vanished, Morgan, Prince of Head, is confronted with a challenge much different from that faced by his land-bound predecessors. Although he wants only to rule and work the land of his birth, he must instead wander strange foreign realms full of untamed magic in the form of riddling wraiths, mysterious harpists, and a lost crown, a magical sword, and an all-knowing High One who rules over all. In his quest for a new life for himself and his people, he must face great dangers, not only to himself, but to his promised bride, his land, and his very way of life. And apparently this volume's got the Riddle Master of Head, Heir of Sea and Fire, and Harpist in the Wind. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what I think of this. Next up was a funny one. I found this in the same shop that I went to with Caitlin before. Caitlin managed to convince me to give it to her last time for because she'd read the original book, this author's first story, and really enjoyed it, and she was desperate to read this story. And then there was quite a few in there this time, so I picked it up again, and that is Hunters and Collectors by M. Sedaine. I just love the sound of this story. It says, John Tamberlin is the tomahawk, the universe's most feared food critic, though he himself prefers the terms forensic gastronomer. He's on a quest in search of the much-storied Hotel Grand Skies, a secretive and elusive haven where the rich and famous retreat to bask in perfect seclusion, a place where the waiters know their knife fish from their butter knife, their carotid from their subclavian artery, and are trained to enforce the house rules with brutal efficiency. Blurring the lines between detective story, horror and sci-fi, Hunters and Collectors is a mesmeric trip into the singular imagination of M. Sedaine, and I just can't wait to try this out. I've got his first book, Theatre of the Gods, so now I've got both books, and this one, just because it's about food, really interests me. And then the final few books. The last novel that I was actually kindly sent by the publisher is Sarah Perry's The Essex Serpent. This is such a beautiful book. It's got beautiful, beautiful end papers. I don't know if you can see them because of the colour. They're sort of yellow. And I've heard really wonderful things about this. It's a historical fiction set in 1893. And I've just heard nothing but great things. Mercedes keeps telling me how wonderful it is, and I knew I had to try it out. So thank you so much to the publisher for sending me this, and I can't wait to see what I think. The final two things I picked up recently were graphic novels. The first is volume 6 of Saga. I can't wait to try this out and see where the story is going. And the last one is volume 1 of Plutona. I've been meaning to pick this up for ages, but it's eluded me. It's by Jeff Lemire, Emmy Lennox and Geordie Belair. I love the look of the artwork in here. It just looks right up my street. And the story says, 5 suburban kids make a shocking discovery while exploring the woods one day after school. The body of the world's greatest superhero, Plutona, lying dead in the mud and grass. This discovery sends them on a journey that will threaten to tear apart their friendship and their lives. A dark, heartbreaking coming-of-age tale exploring friendship and loss from master storyteller Jeff Lemire, who does Descender and Sweet Tooth, and critically acclaimed artist Emmy Fox, who does Emmytown. So I'm really intrigued by this one, and I can't wait to see what I think. So that's all the books that I have been sent or picked up recently. Have you read any of these? Have you loved and enjoyed any of these? Have you hated any of these? Let me know in the comments. As always, let's chat, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.